Cosplay Stitch and Seam!
Yes,
I beat you to it.
You did. You're too fast for me. You're so fast. So hi guys, welcome to the podcast. It's been a whole week since last time. I hope you guys are having fun, making lots of things and sharing it. We are doing an interview episode this week, but before we get to that, we have a little bit of housekeeping. As always, if you guys want to share your own horror stories, your stories of fun at conventions, uplifting, anything, any topics you want us to cover, you can send them to us at CosplayStitchandSeam@gmail.com.
And you can also go to the website, CosplayStitchandSeam.com, and fill out the form and send us your cosplay horror stories or your topic suggestions, or just say hello over there. So we love it.
And then there's also our Facebook group if you guys want to join in, get with the community. We have over 300 members now, and we have different things you can post on daily. We always have a work in progress Wednesday where you can share what you're working on. So come hang out and introduce yourselves. Oh, and of course our podcast is runs from viewers like you and all that fun stuff. So if you guys want to support us,
viewers like you,
it goes to our bandwidth and website hosting costs. You can go to Coffee, and our coffee tag is Cosplay Stitch if you'd like to buy us a coffee, which actually buys us bandwidth. So
bandwidth, coffee, caffeine for the internet.
Caffeine for the internet. Remember, if we hit that goal, you guys get some fun episodes, ridiculous horror stories, embarrassing moments, things like that. So yeah, anything else, Mercedes, before we get started?
Nope, not that I think of. Let's dive into this. This is going to be a fun episode. I'm really excited.
All right, so today we're talking about body positivity, but we're also talking about how that equates in other aspects of cosplay, particularly in burlesque. Today, let's see, we've got Desiree, Sig, and Callie. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how you got into cosplay?
Certainly. Well, the three of us started out performing in burlesque, mainly nerdlesque, which typically deals with pop culture and geek themes. So that's kind of how we cosplay. A lot of, we do cosplay at conventions and stuff like that as a hobby, which is so it kind of goes into each other, which is great. I'm the marketing director for the FANdom Nerdlesque, which is the company that we have co-founded and started.
Okay.
Oh, that's so cool.
And Sig and Callie?
Well, my name is Sig. I am the production head of the FANdom Nerdlesque. We don't just do cosplay of course we do that with it, but we also do theatrical plays with the cosplays themselves, and we do our burlesque shows in a very theatrical way. And
fun.
It's my job to keep track of which venues we're going to and work with the venues to make sure our productions run smoothly.
Fantastic. And Callie?
Hi, I'm Callie. I got in to cosplay and burlesque mainly cosplay started with Dragon Con, and then I ran into these wonderful people in the process and got involved in Nerdlesque, and it's been a wild ride since. I'm our logistics head, so I take care of all of our technology needs, all of our scheduling. I'm always looking for fun new implementations and just making sure everyone's on the same track.
Oh, awesome.
Callie makes sure that we know what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's a very important job.
It really is. It really is. Very cool. So thank you guys. Just so our listeners at home know, I feel like people use this term and maybe don't know what burlesque means. Can you tell us what burlesque is?
So the base of burlesque is it's just entirely supposed to be variety. It doesn't necessarily just mean peeling. Burlesque can also be singing. It can be sketch comedy. It can be stand-up comedy. Just in general, it's a bunch of different stuff, and it's originally created to protest various organizations that were trying to dictate what people should or should not do on stage.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, so it was originally meant to be a political statement, and in a lot of ways it still is. And it's a good place for people to come out and really give a show to everyone, as well as build themselves up and give themselves a platform to do what it is that they do best.
Very cool. Desiree, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I guess what we do is a little different in the sense that, a lot of times people think burlesque and they think, like Sig was saying, like the classic glitz and glam and the peeling and whatnot. It started as it's basically the grandmother of modern day stripping, but it's definitely branched out to mean different things. What I love about Nerdlesque, which is what we do, like I said, it has pop culture themes, geek themes. We're able to kind of explore our favorite childhood characters in a way that we, hadn't looked at them before. And kind of like Sig was saying, we're able to take these and put them into scripted shows, so they're kind of musicals, but with variety acts instead of musical numbers.
That's really fun. Callie, did you want to add anything?
I think they covered most of it. A lot of there's a lot of different sides of burlesque, and so I came from more of a dance background, but we have people that started out as actors or fire performers or comedians or what have you. And so it's a great marriage of all these different talents in a group and bringing them all and all the different types of acts to stage. And then, as Des said, when we delve a little bit further into Nerdlesque, a lot of it is either taking the original story of a character or sometimes putting your own spin on it. And it's exciting. I think one of the most exciting things that we had happen recently, and it was interesting, was we were at a con, because we do some con shows, and especially at conventions is where we find that the people watching the show are just so ecstatic to see those characters like brought to life on stage. So I think that's one of the most fun things that we get to do
For sure.
with burlesque.
Yeah, I really like what you said about how it's taking a character and putting your own spin on it. And I feel like that's like at the root of what cosplay is for just about everyone. I just don't think we see it as much in more mature entertainment. So that's really cool.
Yeah, on the burlesque side as well. Like, I thought burlesque was the glitz and glam and the, like, just everything that you originally think about burlesque, and then here it's more about variety and I absolutely love that, and now I'm like more intrigued.
Yeah, I'd say like more than half of our numbers are not what you would necessarily classically classify as sexy. Like a lot of it is like there's an entire group that's kind of a sister group to us called Bump in the Night, and they do what they call ghoulisque. Like there's a horror aspect to some of what our performers do. There's a more funny aspect, and so a lot of people tend to think of that just like sheer sexy, like Vegas showgirl type stuff, when we get to bring in a lot of different aspects outside of that.
Very cool. Let's start with Desiree, this next question. How has burlesque cosplay changed how you feel about yourself, or what positive changes has burlesque cosplay made for you?
Oh, goodness.
I know it's a big question.
Question, actually, because it does hold a lot of significance for me. I was raised in a very conservative household. So there was a lot of stigma around burlesque and this kind of art form when I was first introduced to it. But what I found that it's really brought me is, one, it's definitely expanded my view of this kind of work, like the creativity that goes into it, the amount of hours people spend on perfecting acts.
Oh,
just
definitely.
The amount of passion that people throw into this stuff to make something really, really beautiful. The other thing that was really significant for me was how it made me look at my own body, and how I chose to reveal or not reveal it. it was very, very empowering in that way. And it was even more fun when I was able to translate that into different characters that I was really fond of as well. So I was able to bring like another dynamic to those, to certain characters that I admired or wanted to send a certain message through a character piece. But yeah, so burlesque cosplays made some pretty significant changes in my life, and just that it's become a huge sense of joy and liberation in my own life.
That is awesome. Let's see, Callie, same question.
Echoing a lot of what Desiree said, it very much is empowering. I've had a lot of like weight gain and weight loss, and I've noticed that, you know, sometimes I'm not super happy with my body, but it doesn't matter is the second that I step on stage, because I'm there and I'm getting to live in that character for a few minutes. And so it's really exciting to be able to get into that character. And then kind of from the crafting side of creating the actual costumes, I feel like with every single costume that I've made, I've learned something brand new.
Oh, definitely.
Like, you know, my first like big cosplay that I did was a Poison Ivy one, and that was just taking like, you know, the little sewing things that my grandma had taught me when I was young, and then from there, I think the next big one that I did was Enchantress, and I learned metalwork with that and like all sorts of different stuff. So each time I get to add on a new skill, and you either get to learn something new from someone, learn it on your own, or sometimes you get the great opportunity to teach it to someone else too. So it's also really great in terms of relationship building, because you often find like, oh my gosh, I have this great idea, but I don't know how to execute it. And then you end up talking to other people, and someone has something to contribute, and then you just build those relationships.
Very cool.
So.
Sig, same question.
So I think that the burlesque change that I went through was more so like a social sort of change. Just in the sense of, as a dude, the whole world is a dude's world. So for stepping into the burlesque community, it was one of the first times that I ever actually was not the center of attention for being a guy. And I was able to understand that there's a lot more value in my feminine side than I ever thought there was. I found myself up on stage in all kinds of crazy makeup and different types of costumes of different forms of variety and revealingness. And I found myself next to all of the most powerful women I've ever met, and just I kind of humbled in a way, you know, just kind of came to an understanding that, you know, gender is far more an interesting subject than I may have previously thought. And
cool.
yeah, and it just really came down to I found out that I very much enjoy being on stage. I very much enjoy the reactions that I get from everyone, and I found a lot of talents that I didn't know I had, and it all just came down to one person saw me as a redhead and was like, "Hey, do you want to be Ron Weasley?" Literally, that's it. So it's been a long journey, and it's been a very very self-improving journey, and it's really helped my relationships with a lot of different people. And I'd like to say the community has probably brought me some of the best friends I'll ever have.
Very cool. Very cool. You guys have all kind of touched on this from a construction standpoint on this next question. I feel like some skits and stuff you'll see people do like quick change costumes, but with like Nerdlesque, how much of a challenge does that change things with having to construct outfits that are made basically for deconstruction or removal? Let's start with Callie.
So I had a lot to learn, because I came from a place where in dance, like, you're all wearing the same costume. You don't have to, like, and typically you buy them. So, like, that, like, making costumes from scratch was, I knew how to sew, but it was still a pretty new thing. And I had recently gotten into cosplay, but then actually trying to figure out how to remove clothing is a surprisingly difficult thing sometimes. And so, like, you know, you'll find yourself with like tons and tons of snaps. And I know you had mentioned wanting to talk about horror stories, and I think my biggest horror story has come from costume malfunctions on stage.
No.
And the most notable one was at our video game themed Send Noobs show. And I was playing Princess Peach, and I was so excited because I had made my first tearaway bra cup. And I was like so stoked, and I put so much effort into it and it looked good. And during the second night, they just like my boobs must have gotten bigger, and one of the cups just kept popping off. And so I'm like trying to finish my number, just like, because you don't want to ruin the whole reveal. So I'm trying to like finish my number by like holding the cup in place between my like arm and my chest. Like, so that was a big lesson. So I learned that if you're making tearaway cup bras, always make them even a size bigger than you think you need. Because I went a size bigger, and then I must have gained a little weight, and boobs got bigger, and those puppies just did not want to stay on.
Oh no! Oh wow!
To her credit, she rocked that act regardless.
Oh, nice.
That is amazing.
So well.
Let's go with Desiree next.
Well, yeah, kind of like Callie was saying, it is challenging because you know you can have an image of how you want your cosplay to look in your head, but sometimes the application of having to remove it in a creative way can get really tricky. For example, I played Samus in that same video game show that Callie was Princess Peach in, and I mean, there's to Samus's Zero suit, there really isn't a whole lot to peel. Yeah, so one piece, and that's it. So I had to get creative in other ways to kind of compensate for that. So certain characters really are difficult depending on what kind of costume you're trying to dance in, and you know, I've seen just some ingenious applications of creativity with that. Silver Kitsune, who does a lot of performing with us, did a Commander Shepard where primarily most of it is zippers, and just the placement and the execution was flawless.
Nice.
You really see some really impressive ingenuity come out of these ideas. But like Callie was saying, you know, with each new challenge to yourself, you kind of learn new things, and you know, so it's another really fun part of our creative process. Is not only are we writing scripts and putting casts together and you know, basically writing plays from scratch, but you know, we get to be a part of the costume construction process and music selection process and all of those other pieces too.
Nice.
Lots of little moving pieces.
Yeah, I bet. How about you, Sig?
I am not much of a costume builder. I was very blessed to have a wife who's incredibly good at costume building and had been doing so before I met her. So she helps me with all the snaps and zippers and stuff, but whenever I'm building my own cosplays, I try my best to piece things together through Amazon purchasing. And I like to support my local artists in the best way that I know how. So
for sure.
That's
Noble
how I
cause.
usually hand that. Yeah. My only challenge, I would say, is that for this last Marvel show we did, my Deadpool mask was 3 sizes too small, and I thought I was in a gimp suit.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh man.
So
very
I actually want to jump in with a question.
Yeah.
It's not on the list, but it just popped into my head, and I was like, I want to know this.
Yeah.
So what is it like? Let's say, you know, like you're getting ready for a show and whatnot. What is it like a day in the life of, or like a night in the life of one of your shows? Like, what's it like from beginning to end? Like
Xanax. I'm just kidding.
You joke, but
let's start with Sig
I have
on
a
that
prescription.
and then we'll bounce around.
Okay, so the way it works down is each of us, we do most of our preparation in the weeks up to the show rather than the show date itself. We actually hire a stage manager who takes care of all of the fires before they come to us, because a lot of times we're in the show. and we're busy getting ourselves painted purple, or getting into a skin-tight latex zero-suit Samus suit, or sitting in the corner and pretending that the fires aren't happening, whichever one of us that is, I don't know. But in reality, we're there, and we have a bunch of different people that are a part of the team that we use to keep track of things. But literally, we show up to the venue. Depending on the venue, the rules are different. Sometimes they let us in early, sometimes they make us wait, sometimes they have to make us come in early, and we have to sit there for 6 hours and wait for our show.
Oh, jeez.
It's a number of different ways. It depends on the size of the venue and what we're dealing with. But overall, we usually use that time to do rehearsals for scripted shows, or we just sit around and play board games up there and hang out while everyone's putting glitter and running around in different states of dress. It's fun.
Very cool.
And then the show begins, and we go down there, and everybody's professional. They know exactly where they should be and how to be. We're all very respectful of each other, and we do the show. We stay after for a few minutes and allow people to take pictures and high five, and oh my god, I can't believe that was you under that mask, and oh my god, I can't believe you pulled waffles out of there. That's crazy. You know, it's all ridiculousness all the time. And then we go back upstairs, and we all like take a moment to take a deep breath. We pack up our stuff, and then we say goodbye to the show, and that's really what the life of it. But most of the action happens a week or two beforehand. We have our own little hell week that we all deal with, and
I'm sure
it is what it is. Yeah.
Super relatable there.
Yeah, for sure. Callie.
I just take a Xanax and I black out. No, we actually, someone came to me and was telling me something that happened backstage, or a compliment, I guess, about how we handled something backstage from a fellow producer that had been passed on to her from a performer. And I was like, I have no idea what she's talking about because I'm so in the zone, but I'm glad that we handled it well. I have anxiety, so it's just kind of a day in the life every day that I'm anxious. But so I am kind of, as they were saying, I'm the one that kind of makes sure we've got all the lists, all the things. I bring everything, including the kitchen sink sometimes. I did bring pipes, like bucket pipes for our Send Noob show at AWA, so that was cool. So that's kind of like a kitchen sink.
A little bit.
But so I'm usually I do bake in some time to like shower that day. And I have really long hair, so actually that is a big part of my like day of show thing, because I have to make sure that my hair will get dry by the time we start the show.
Important, yes.
So, but usually I start the day out kind of running around printing off all of the I have all of our tech set up, so when our performers submit their info for the show, all of it auto populates to several forms depending on the type of show. Sometimes it's stage notes, sometimes it's kitten notes, sometimes it's MC notes, all that sort of thing. So I'm making sure that all of those are in order and getting printed and taken care of. Packing up everything. We have a tipping mechanism that we typically do, especially for our larger shows, where the audience will make stuff by hand out of foam board, and usually it's something related to the show. The first time that we did it was for our Batman show, and I still have no idea how this happened, but I made 75 batarangs.
Oh my
gosh. So the audience buys them, and then they can throw them at the stage when they see something they like.
Oh my god.
So it's a great way to get the audience involved. So for our Marvel show,
amazing.
We did Infinity Stones. But it was actually pretty great. We had one guy in the audience that was like, man, this is better than throwing singles of strippers. And I was like, you keep coming to our shows, man. We like that. So I'm gathering all of those up. I have the FANdom Lost and Found at my apartment. So I have everything. So there's usually a lot of craziness, and then trying to get my own sanity together, and then getting to the venue, and then it's just a blur from there. Just trying to make sure everything's sorted, but that's also a product of my own insanity. So
Yeah, and just as a side
very
note,
cool.
the stage kittens is what we call our stagehands, or the ones who
Oh,
pick up the
gotcha.
clothing off the stage, or they collect
Uh-huh.
tips and things like that.
Oh, very
And
cool.
I realized we were using terminology we did
Oh,
not
yeah.
explain yet, so I wanted to say that.
No, thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Good catch.
Desiree, same question.
I think kind of like Callie said, I think we all kind of go into a mode the day of show, and
Mhm.
that means different things for all of us. But I definitely kind of get a little bit aloof because when actually talking with folks, just because I get a little nervous and stuff before showtime to appreciate
Mhm.
it. But it definitely takes a lot of coordination and teamwork as well, because we're normally kind of like Sig said, sometimes we'll have 20 minutes to prepare for the start of show. Sometimes we'll have 6 hours. It just depends. So normally we kind of work together to coordinate, who's arriving at the venue at what time. Do we need to be
Gotcha.
out if we were to let them in, this, that, or the other thing.
Uh-huh.
And just kind of, I know Callie and I have done this a few times. We'll just go sit to the side a second and be like, okay, hold on. Mental checklist. Do we have such and such? Okay, such and such. Okay,
Oh,
we
man.
got that. We're fine.
Keys, phone,
Mhm.
wallet.
Yep.
I really
yep.
like the similarities in this to like prepping for like a cosplay contest.
Oh, totally.
Of
Yeah,
like
it's-
all the prep, the blanking out, the like. I'm loving it.
But yeah, so it gets a little complicated, but it's a lot of fun. And so as long as we've got most of our pre-planning done, it goes pretty smoothly the day of show.
Gotcha. Very cool. Let's see. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Mercedes?
Oh no, I think I'm good.
Cool. So this is a slightly more serious question. I hope it's okay. It seems like there's a lot of common misconceptions about like burlesque and sexy cosplay in general, even from the cosplay community itself. Do you guys have any suggestions for how to kind of help that or destigmatize it, or how we can work toward fixing those attitudes? I'm gonna start this time with Desiree.
Well, I think I have a couple of different opinions on it, just because I have a young daughter as well,
Mhm.
who loves doing cosplay. Absolutely.
Sure.
And part of what I love about the cosplay community is that I think that they've made some pretty great strides recently in destigmatizing it a bit.
Yeah.
I have no problem walking around a con, typically, I mean, with the right, family-friendly hours, obviously. But, I have no trouble walking around a con and my daughter seeing a more sexually suggestive cosplay with it.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
She sees these powerful female characters that she really.
Right. Uh-huh.
I think that a lot of the problem that the community faces is the behavior towards it. I don't think that some people do a good enough job of policing their reactions to sexy cosplay.
Okay.
Same kind of, and it kind of mirrors society too, right? You've got
Right.
or perhaps touch inappropriately, or don't give the proper boundaries when taking pictures. I know that's a huge problem, or has been.
Yes.
When doing cosplay.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And talk about horror stories. I had one convention that I went to that within the course of an hour, I had 2 different incidences where one person grabbed me inappropriately, and another gentleman decided that after he took his selfie with me, he thought it was okay to just go and kiss me on the cheek.
No.
Rather creepy and strange way. So I'm like,
Yeah.
boundaries like that I think that are the main problem, and that's
Uh-huh.
the tricky part, because you can't always enforce other people's behavior. You can bring it to the attention of the con organizers or security, but
Yeah.
I think that's really the tricky part, is being safe about it too.
Yeah.
The feeling that you have to be hyper vigilant.
Mm.
So that, to me, that's the frustrating part of it, is just
For sure.
that I have to be hyper vigilant in order.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I necessarily have a solution to the problem. I think
Sure.
that it's overall more of a behavioral problem that
Mm-hmm.
is addressed from a couple of different angles, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
It does. It totally makes sense. Let's go to Sig, and then we'll do Callie.
I can say that I don't really have to deal with this problem as often as others in this group, I'm sure.
Uh-huh.
For one thing, I don't really do sexy cosplays myself. I take my clothes off on stage and then immediately put them back on before I go into a crowd. I'm what we like to call a never nude, so it's fun that way. Um, so honestly, I've only ever had to deal with groping and stuff as I was like getting off stage or something like that, and it's always by gay men. I think I've had one or two bachelorettes at their party or something who's gone crazy or something along those lines. But for the most part, the solutions that I've tried to put forward for myself, because I'm not really the type to tell other people how to live their life or how to do what they need to do. I call it out when I see it. Like I was fuming
Yeah.
when Desi told me what had happened to her because I was standing maybe 20 feet from her when it happened, and I was like, I would have
Oh,
decked him if I had been
yikes.
standing next to him. Like obviously I wouldn't actually physically hurt him, but I would have immediately
Right.
made sure he was shamed for what he was doing. And I think that that's what
Right,
it really
right.
takes. Is everybody thinks that it's locker room talk or it's all gentleman's club or whatever, but honestly they're not as safe as they think they are. And I think that if we
Mm-hmm.
push light on that and show them that they're not as safe as they think they are, it may
Mm-hmm.
bring it down, and only the real ass will be left. Excuse my language.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. I think like you said, like you wouldn't actually deck him, but like calling it out and being like, "Hey, that's not cool." Like it goes a long way toward normalizing that it's not okay, you know?
Exactly, and that's the goal that I'd want to put forward. Again, I understand that when that kind of thing happens, you just want to shrink away from it and pretend it never
Mhm.
happened and not make a scene.
Mhm.
Like I've been in that position myself, so
Mhm.
it's up to the person standing next to you that it's happening to have your back and take that uncomfortable situation and share the burden with you, so that
Definitely.
it's not something that you feel like you have to be gaslighting yourself on
Right.
whether or not you should
Yeah.
freak out about it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's go to Callie.
Yeah, I think really the number one thing is, as it's already been said, to call it out when it happens, and make it understood that it's not okay. I think one of the things that's been really interesting to me, because I have a muggle job and I'm pretty like I love to talk about what I do, and I'm a very open person just generally. So usually when I'm talking at work, people know that I perform. They don't know that it's necessarily burlesque, but I'll say like, oh, it's like musical theater and cosplay, which it is. And so, but the occasional people that I do decide to tell, I've actually been pretty surprised, in both directions. Like some people that find out, they're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, I totally want to come to a show, like this is awesome. And then there have been a handful of people where I'm like, especially some of the younger people, which is really interesting, that are like, oh, that's a little weird, which is super interesting. But it's always, I have to say, like a lot of the time it surprises me. There's like a VP where I work that was like, I still want to come to a show, and I was like, how about you come to a show that I'm not performing in?
Yeah, yeah.
There are things you can't unsee, but it is interesting to see, because we generally think that, I guess, or at least what I've come, especially since I've been around this community so much more recently, is I usually end up thinking, oh, well, most of the younger folks are generally okay with that, or are more accepting of it. And that's not always the case. So I think a lot of it also just comes to general, like, respect of what people's boundaries are in every way. Some people just aren't comfortable with sexuality, and, it's not necessarily something that I'm going to force on them. But if they're okay with me being me, and it's kind of goes both ways. So I think there's just like it comes from a general just willingness to let people be themselves and not interfere with the lives of others, as long as they're not harming you.
I like that. Yeah.
But there's no easy way to like enforce that without breaking that itself.
Right.
I realized I actually I skipped the portion where it was like how to get rid of the stigma around burlesque.
Sure.
The answer to that is go to one of the shows, and you'll see that it can be both the sexiest thing you've ever seen and also the most unsexy thing you've ever seen. Because the point is not always to get you a boner, it's to make you laugh, it's to flip what you expect on its head. It is, like I said, sometimes, like, we have a friend who has a wonderful Waffle House act where they go up in a uniform and just pull waffles out of their costume all over the place and throw them out, and you get a free waffle. It's fantastic.
That is so cool.
I mean,
Well, and sorry not to interrupt, but I think a good example of, changing your mind and stuff about burlesque too would be my mom.
My mom
They
too.
can both attest to this. Like I said, I come from a very conservative background.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom, me doing burlesque was a point of contention between the two of us for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
She finally kind of came to a point of, okay, you're a grown woman, you do what you want. And she actually came out, and my mom does theater. She loves acting and musicals in particular. So she said, I'm gonna come out to a show. Can I help you with one? So she was a stage kitten. She was a stagehand for one of our shows.
Oh, wow.
And I was performing in the show, and I warned her ahead of time, and she said, hey, Mom, just so you know, like, no holds barred, okay? I'm not going to censor my performance just because you're here. And she actually really pleasantly surprised me once she was able to see what it really is, because there is just a large misconception about what burlesque is.
Right.
You're talking about, people associate it usually with, like, the glitz and glam and not always in a positive light.
Uh-huh.
So once my mom was able to really see what we do and see how fun the environment is and how it promotes body positivity and all these wonderful positive things,
Right.
fully supportive of me doing it now.
That is
Which
awesome.
is a complete 180 from how she felt. So I think it's really it's a willingness to immerse yourself in it to a degree and learn about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Get rid of the ignorance surrounding it.
and
Yeah.
also
I like
our
the
last show
idea.
had old Greg drinking Baileys from a shoe, and it was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I really like the idea of, like, the burlesque, nerdlesque, all that stuff being a combination of your love of the character and loving your body. Like, it sounds amazing.
That sums up really
I seriously
well.
wish we had it, like, locally, because I really want to see this show.
Very
Oh,
cool.
absolutely. Y'all let us know whenever you're in Atlanta.
Yes! Oh my gosh. So you guys have all kind of mentioned body positivity, and I definitely want to kind of get into that with some of these questions. Do you guys have advice for maybe people who have been shy about it or are looking to get into cosplay, about maybe, like, putting their worries about what other people might think aside, or just general advice on how to be more accepting about their bodies toward cosplay, I guess? Let's start with Callie.
I've gone through a lot of, like, fluctuations myself over the past couple of years. A lot of it has to do with, like, my anxiety. So it's been, I've gained like 40 pounds and then dropped 30 and that sort of stuff. And I will say that, like, there's no one, like, magic formula for it. But what I do think helps is finding a character that you truly love. Like, someone that you just absolutely adore, and it just doesn't matter. Like, I actually, this is my third or fourth time doing an act as Alice from Magicians, and I just got the footage back, and I, like, almost cried watching the footage because I was like,
Aww.
man, like, I really love this act so much. And, like, I like, could pick out in some of the pictures that we had gotten back about, like, oh, I wish my body looked slightly different. But then watching the video, it didn't matter. Like,
That's
it was
awesome.
just me getting to play this character that I love so much. I think that is definitely something that helps. And then also just, I mean, part of it is deciding to be around the people that make you feel good and support you doing that. It's not, I was previously around a group that was not super supportive of like cosplay or people that weren't like super hot in everybody's eyes. And so coming into this community and finding people that just love you for you is really wonderful. And so sometimes it's just finding the right people to surround yourself with too.
I like that. Sig, how about you?
Honestly, I've had to struggle with it myself. It's something that I've always been a rail. Like throughout high school and college, I was like 6 foot, 140, like nothing. And then only in the last maybe 3 years have I gained about 80 pounds. So like I'm very new to this whole like, oh, my body is weird looking to people, huh? But the real fact of the matter is, when it comes to cosplay that I've known is, who are you cosplaying for? Are you cosplaying for yourself? Are you cosplaying for your friends? Or are you cosplaying for that jerk off over in the corner who's making snide comments? And the answer to that question should always be for yourself and for other people who love that character that are going to appreciate you doing it.
Never for the jerk off in the corner.
Hey. I've also found that anytime I've ever felt low about myself, being on stage has really helped, because the second you take your shirt off and you've taken that dive and you just hear the whole crowd just, whoa, yeah. It's just that moment. You're Magic Mike on that stage, like, yeah, I'm Channing Tatum looking right now. Let's do this.
That's so cool.
That's awesome.
I love that.
You get to ride that high for a bit after, but like I said, it is a struggle. And it is its own animal to fight and demon to deal with, and there's a lot of people way more qualified than I to tell you how to get in that mental state. But I will say that cosplay is always for everyone, but more importantly, it's for yourself.
I like that. Let's go, Desiree.
I think they both touched on it really well. I think that part of the importance of what we do, both, with sexier cosplay and with burlesque, is, we live in a society where we are fed a certain media image of what our bodies should look like every day. We're inundated.
Definitely.
That combined with a lot of, more sexually repressed ideals. Especially with religious upbringings and whatnot. It depends on what area of the country you're in, I'm sure. But, overarching in our society, there's a lot of stigma surrounding these things. And so it's very difficult for people who, can't spend 2 to 3 hours at the gym to look, like Channing Tatum, to go and, and to have the guts to go up on stage and, really rock it and be themselves. And I think, like Sig was saying, surrounding yourself with people that, that make you feel good about you. And that's really what burlesque and our nerdlesque is all about. You are performing for people who love watching the passion of what you do, because you're doing it because it's something you love. And really embracing that and showing that, we are all normal people who all have insecurities about our bodies and the way they look. And I think that resonates with everybody. So
definitely.
Being a part of a burlesque show and watching someone who may not be in, this, epitome of fitness shape that the media like shoves at us every day, seeing them in their normal everyday self, it's more easily identifiable, and relatable to an audience. And it really does help break down that stigma of, feeling guilty about your body, that negative body image, either with cosplay or with burlesque. Just accepting people as they are and surrounding yourselves with positive voices.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's a really good way to put it. It really like normalizes that, not like basically that all bodies are different, but all bodies are good.
I
like that a lot.
Bodies are different too. We come in all different shapes and sizes, and it's something to celebrate instead of ostracize different people.
Absolutely.
And to look at someone and be like, to judge them based on how they looked is incredibly wrong, because you don't know their life, you don't know their story, you don't know their body, you don't know what they're going through to be in that state, and you don't know if they're trying to make changes in their life. And in order, I think one of the biggest steps to making any change in your life is you've got to love yourself, and you've got to love your body, no matter what state you're in or what the society thinks that you're in. It's your body. Love it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
For sure.
I had one thing to add on that too. I realized that all three of us are talking about getting on stage. You don't have to get on stage to feel comfortable in your body, for sure. But also, like, if you are going to get on stage, don't just like hop up on any stage. Like, make sure that you're legally allowed to be there. And then also, if you're going to get naked, make sure you're like following whatever the laws are in the local area. Like, don't just start taking your clothes off in the middle of a convention because you feel comfortable with your body. There are laws.
Beautiful disclaimer you got there. That's wonderful. Great tiny text at the bottom.
Pink parts. Just make sure you're legal.
Thank you for that lovely disclaimer.
No problem.
Do not strip in the middle of your mall.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you can down to a certain level, but just
once.
make sure that
You can do it once.
Well, unless you're at a strip mall.
Okay. Nice. Does this mean I don't have to do a pun at the end? That was a pretty good one.
That was a good one.
So I like the advice you gave for like trying it out for the first time. Do you guys have any like let's see, how can I put this? Let's say you had a bad experience. What advice would you have for like working through that and maybe giving it another try? Does that make sense?
A bad experience doing what? Burlesque or cosplay?
Either one actually. Mostly cosplay, but it could be a stage experience if you like maybe just weren't performing your best or had like a costume malfunction like you talked about. Like, how do you psych yourself up to try again?
I mean, I think we all have our like off moments, right? Or like, are you talking about specifically like your first time is like just a nightmare and you're like, oh, I'm gonna give up?
I mean, either one, because like, I think even if we've been doing it for a while, if you have a bad experience, it can definitely put you into a bad mindset.
Yeah, I think we all deal with that differently. It just depends on like where your interests lie. I know a couple of our friends have been kind of like, in terms of acts, we have one specific friend that was kind of not really feeling anything and then just recently hit this like spark of inspiration and has like 5 new acts that she's like fire about. And so sometimes it just comes down to like inspiration for it and maybe, you know, you have a bad experience and you take a step back and then one day it hits you in the face and you're just like, well, I have to do this. For me, I love learning. So a lot of it is just like every time we have a new show, I'm like, you know, I'm going to take a break. And then I have this idea and then I'm like, oh, and then I could like learn this new thing that I've been meaning to try. And like, so that's kind of what gets me fired up.
Nice.
But I will say like my first time ever doing a burlesque performance, I was doing Enchantress and I had all these chains everywhere because I was doing the movie version. Yes, I know everybody hates Suicide Squad. It's okay. But I had the bra is like just tons and tons of chains and that hair is so long and it wasn't a big crowd, so it wasn't super mortifying, but my final reveal happens and I can't, like the bra just gets stuck in the hair. And so I just like let it hang there and you couldn't actually see it when I turned around because there was so much hair. So it just worked out. But that was my first ever burlesque number that I did like as a solo. And I was like, well, time to roll on. Let's try a new thing. Let's not do chains again. And then I did do chains again for Thanos, but I changed my hair so that it wouldn't get stuck. So nice. Lesson learned.
How about Desiree or Sig? Did you want to add anything on that?
Desi can go first.
Well, I think it's like kind of like Callie said, a lot of times it comes down to inspiration and kind of what hits you to kind of refresh your creative energies. Because I think, you know, when you do mess up, sometimes it can really set you back and you kind of start questioning, you know, like, you know, depending on who you're surrounding yourself with, you can kind of have thoughts of, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, or, maybe I shouldn't try to do this type of particular act anymore. And kind of like that negative self-talk. And again, I think that, it's very important who you surround yourself with.
Yes.
For that kind of thing too. But yeah, just, I think that that kind of thing happening really shows who has a passion for what they're doing and who's going to get easily discouraged by a setback. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I like that.
When inspiration hits you, it's your passion hitting you, kind of remind you that, this is why you do this, because you get inspired by these kinds of things. And, you have to put that creativity, have some sort of an outlet. So for me, like Callie was saying, learning new skills, putting your energy into, taking a step back and kind of doing something for yourself for a little bit and renewing that creative energy can really help with setbacks and overcoming them.
Yeah, I like that you guys have all talked about how passion is so important to it. Because I feel like a lot of people who like walk away from or get sour about cosplay is because they keep pushing themselves to do something when they're not feeling that passion, and it just makes this kind of like resentment build. And I like that you suggest like changing things up, like finding different ways, like exploring the hobby in new ways and finding a new way to be passionate about it is really cool. Sig, did you want to add anything?
Sure. So when it comes to casting and it comes to picking people out for parts or doing things for myself and cosplay and all that, I have something that I really like to push called the hype factor. If you are not hyped for it, do not do it. And that goes with what you were saying about passion. So I call it the hype factor. And if someone's just not into it or they feel like they're being voluntold, they'll never do well. But for the actual question itself of like, what do you do when you mess up? I have two methods. One is I like to look at it like it's a car accident. The second that you, the second you wrap around a pole, you need to get out and get into another car and start driving again. Or the longer that you wait, the more of a fear you're going to have getting back on it. It's one of those things psychologically that's going to affect you. If your bra did not come off when you meant for it to, if your pants got snagged and you tripped over yourself, you've got to be ready to try that act again, or do something else different, or practice it further and then try again. The other thing, which is my style and what I like to do, I'd like to think pretty well known for my improv skills. When it comes to things not going the way they're supposed to, I make it look like it was on purpose. Or I get off and I say, oh, did you love that comedy bit? That was absolutely not meant to be a comedy bit. And I work my way through it, and I usually play a lot of characters that are pretty dorky and clumsy anyway. Ron Weasley tripping over his shoelaces is 100% canon. So I like to try and go with that mentality, or like, maybe I didn't have a great time, but I think everybody in the crowd did. And I like to look at it that way of like, well, that was a happy accident. It's just Bob Ross your way through it and make sure you get back up on there. And when it comes to cosplay, if something doesn't work the way you want and you get discouraged by it and you don't want to do it anymore, don't force yourself. Like, keep your hype factor. Sell the pieces so that someone else can make it better, or start over with a new plan, or just do what your passions tell you to do, because this isn't like you're a kid eating your peas. You don't have to force yourself to do anything. I like that. This is like a completely like off-topic question, or kind of on topic, but so with like competitive cosplay, you do a contest, you get to perform one time, you get to do the skit one time, and you may never get a second chance. With your burlesque shows, like how many do you guys typically do in would it be like a season or a year, or like how many like times do you get to try to do the same performance? Well, you see, burlesque actually has its own competitive side. We have burlesque competitions, festivals, where
I didn't
people
even know this.
Oh yeah, they have festivals. We used to have one in Atlanta called Southern Fried that ended up having to go to the wayside. But there's Great Southern Exposure and a huge number of others. We actually have a couple of troupe members who have some of their own. I'm sure Callie remembers the name because I don't. But we have these burlesque competitions where you do get one shot at it per year. You apply to be in the competition just like you would a cosplay competition, and then you try and place, and you get first, second, third, or queen, princess, or whatever it is that one does. So I totally feel you on that. But when it comes to using your act, you can actually pitch your act to any number of other producers and any other number of shows you want. I mean, around here, there's about 4 or 5 shows a month that I know of that you could put the same act into. You wouldn't because it's a little unprofessional, but you absolutely could get the practice in doing that before you take it to a bigger show.
Gotcha.
And a lot of our bigger shows that we do, we always do a 2-night event where if you mess it up the first night, you have another night, the next chance to do it even better the second night.
Nice, nice.
So
Okay.
there's plenty of opportunities.
Very cool. Very cool. How many, like, wow, like, I guess you guys have all probably been in it a different amount of time. Like, how many different shows, different performances have you each done? Let's start with Desi.
Oh goodness. I mean, throughout the course of my burlesque career, probably, goodness gracious, probably, I wouldn't say like, maybe like around 60 to 70 shows.
Oh, wow.
It really depends on how often you work. You know, we have,
Mhm.
there are some burlesque performers who choose to try to fill up as many nights of the week with shows as they possibly can.
Sure.
Because it's decent side money if you do it often enough.
Uh-huh.
You know, but, you know, for me, burlesque and nerdlesque is more of a hobby. I'm not relying on it for a source of income. It's side money, but it's not a main focus for me. So, you know, and I've also been doing burlesque for a few years. So in the grand scheme of things, that amount of shows isn't all that insane. But but so I maybe do like a show a month, maybe 2 a month, depending on how busy I feel like being. But we do, like I said, we do have people who choose to go and do shows as often as humanly possible, and they'll perform 3 to 4 nights a week.
Oh, wow.
A dear friend of ours that Candida Valentina, that runs Queerly Beloved Review, that woman travels all over the place and is constantly in shows. You know, like I said, it just depends on how much you're throwing into it and how often you know, that'll affect those numbers.
Gotcha.
Callie, same question.
Yeah, I'd say I usually do about a show a month, sometimes less. It just depends. I primarily only perform in our shows. Every now and then I'll do another show, but having a muggle job, and also a lot of, like, all 3 of us spend a lot of time working on actually producing our shows too. So that also affects our ability to, like, actually spend time doing other shows a lot of the time. Like, for our scripted shows, we have, like, starting 2 months beforehand, we have weekly weeknight rehearsals online, and then we have, about starting a month out, we have weekly in-person rehearsals in addition to that, plus any photo shoots that we have to do, any videography that we need to do, and all of and that's just for the people that are in the cast. And then on top of that, we have a lot of administration work, like communication with venues, getting information from people, designing VIP tables, designing marketing campaigns. So there's a whole, I don't want to say mess of stuff, but there's a whole mess of stuff that goes on to make a burlesque show happen that a lot of us are involved in. And so I choose to focus more on that than my performer side a lot of the time.
Gotcha.
Actually, I really appreciate that too, because, like, that shows it's like there's more than just the performance side of it. There's the planning, there's the booking, there's, like, all that kind of stuff. And my muggle job involves a lot of planning and scheduling and herding cats in a way, and, like, I super appreciate people who take on those kinds of jobs.
Yeah, most people don't, like, and it's interesting because you're in performing arts, and a lot of people are not used to, I mean, especially within burlesque, because a lot of burlesque shows, especially when you talk to just if you were to pick a random person out of the community, a lot of burlesque shows out there are, if you're cast in a show, you show up, you do your number, and then you go home, and you get paid. Like, for a lot of our shows, there's a lot more significant work, partially because we believe in making sure that the cast has a decent relationship with each other, so that when we're backstage, it's a lot easier for people to get along. Usually they're not big spaces, and so you've got a lot of people in various states of undress, super close with each other, and everyone has their own pre-show ritual. And so just so when we're having those big shows, especially, it's really important to do all of that prep work. But even outside of, I think any producer that you talk to in burlesque does a whole host of things that nobody really realizes have to happen in order to actually make the show a success.
And especially since a lot of our bigger scripted shows do run a lot more like a typical theater show. Bit more of moving pieces and whatnot to make it more involved.
Gotcha. Very cool. Like, I'm learning so much, I swear. How about Sig? Did we give you a chance to answer that one?
To answer your original question, I perform every day. It's in my car on the way home, but I do it every day. But no, in reality,
is that Sig or Deadpool?
Now listen, I do what I gotta do, okay? As it comes down, I perform probably close to once every other month. Being just my work schedule has shifted a lot in the last couple of months, so I haven't done it as much. But when I was in my prime, a whole 3 years ago, I was probably doing 2 to 3 shows a month regularly, working with various different troupes throughout. But as soon as we started FANdom and all this overhead came in, and suddenly there was just like a second part-time job suddenly added to everything. I was like, well, okay, I'm gonna do nerdy stuff only for a while. So that's where we've been. Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. Let's see. Mercedes, did you have any other questions you wanted to follow up with?
I've learned so much just listening to all this. I'm still like processing and being like, wow, this is way bigger and more amazing than like I thought I was going into it. And so I don't know what to ask at this point. Like, I'm just in awe.
Guys, if you guys are interested in it, I'm not exactly sure, what the scene is like around where you all are, but you'd be surprised that, at the places that you'll find burlesque being performed. Sometimes it's like a Google search to find the local troupe to go out and support. But
that's awesome.
But it's surprisingly more common than you think it is.
Yes, everyone, please.
And almost everyone is surprised.
Everyone listening, please type in your city name and burlesque, and trust me, you will find something on Facebook. There's a number of groups, number of places. Bars will do it. Some venues will do it. I know Atlanta's scene is been really blown up lately, so it's probably more here than elsewhere. But wherever you live, whatever city you're in, and this is for everyone listening as well, please just look up. Like, let's say you're in Los Angeles. Los Angeles Burlesque probably has a ton of stuff, but I'd say we have traveling performers all the time, and they're from all over.
Minnesota, like all over.
Yeah,
literally.
and we probably know one of them. So.
I found like 3 places already. I did that right now.
And there you go.
One of these. It'd be really fun, I think.
Awesome. I think that's a really good note for us to kind of wrap up on. Do you guys want to go through one more time and like tell us where? Well, you've told us how to find burlesque online, but where can we find you guys? Let's start with Desiree, and then we'll do Sig and Callie.
Gotcha, great. Well, I'm on Instagram as Desiree_evoque. I'm also on Facebook under that name as well. Or you can simply
fill that out for us. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. We've also got a FANdom Facebook page as well under the FANdom Nerdlesque, or on Twitter. And Instagram under those names as well. So we'd love to have you guys follow us to find out what we're doing next.
Nice. Sig.
I am sig.sawyer on Instagram. You really want to get a hold of us, though, it's always good to just go through the FANdom Nerdlesque. We have websites. We have all kinds of different stuff that you can do. FANdom Nerdlesque. Go ahead and go check it out. We're all really, really funny and awesome and awkward, and you're going to love us.
Nice. And Callie.
Sorry, I was talking to mute. I'm on Instagram under Californication, and I have a page on Facebook as well. And all 3 of us, as both of them have said, we're also on the FANdom Nerdlesque pages on Facebook and Insta, Twitter, and the website. And we have some. Yeah, we have some videos on YouTube as well. and I'm actually working on my Californication YouTube channel as well. So
Nice.
that should be out there at some point. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, like we've been talking, we like to end our episodes with some cosplay horror stories. Did you guys have any you wanted to share today? Anybody want to go first?
Oh, who wants to go first on this?
I can go first.
Okay.
So my Santa Zero suit, most recent time that I performed the number, and I love that because it's super comfortable too. I go to peel out of the costume and my zipper broke. I had put a ring on the zipper so that I was able to grab it easily, so I was reaching behind myself, and the ring came off. And like.
Uh-oh.
Puppies!
Sorry, my dog.
Suddenly puppies.
I'm trying to see if I have a good picture of what my malfunction was, because it was
my
funny.
zipper broke, and they had to rip the zipper out of the costume on stage in order to get it
Oh my gosh.
for the number. It was pretty.
Oh my gosh. Your poor costume.
I can replace it.
Oh.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Horror story for me.
Oh man. Oh. Let's see. Who wants to go next?
I can.
Okay.
So for the Marvel show, I played Deadpool, and I bought the full Deadpool costume. I spent a lot of money in China, and well, the mask came in, and it was made for a Chinese boy. And when I put it on my face, and my nose was trying its best to crawl into my sinus cavity, so
Oh no.
I gave it to my wife and was like, "What can we do?" Because the show's in like 2 weeks. And she decided, well, when you talk, what's the problem? I was like, well, when I talk, it was muffled as hell. It was terrible. And I couldn't zip it up in the back. So she added a couple panels in the back to increase its big-headedness ability for me, because I need that.
Uh-huh.
And as I was, trying to talk, it was still muffled. So she's like, well, I'll pad the front in order to get the mask away from your mouth. And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. And then I went on stage at the Shakespeare Tavern, in all majestic Deadpoolness, looking like I had been a dog who ate a bee.
Oh no!
I had big old poofy cheeks, and the mask looked nothing like Deadpool at all, but I was hilarious, and I looked hilarious, so I was good with it.
Oh, that's a bummer.
You could say Deadpool and Indy.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, I didn't even notice a problem. Like,
Nice. Let's see. Who did we not get yet?
me, Callie.
Yay, Callie.
Goodness, I mean, so I shared my Princess Peach and my Enchantress horror stories already. I guess this was on a happier note. Even though it took 3 to 4 hours each night to get me painted as Thanos for our Marvel show. I never realized how much I loved myself in purple, and so I would. So it's less of a horror story. And the paint that I used was phenomenal. I don't know. I guess it was water based, so it came off in like 5 minutes in the shower. It was great.
Oh, awesome.
It just took forever to get on because I had to get it literally on every inch of my body, because I was going to be taking my clothes off as Thanos. And
The
so
horror part was wiping the purple butt prints off the stage.
yes, there were butt prints on the stage. But I did go home and tell my boyfriend, like, what would you do if I permanently dyed my skin purple? And he was like, you'd probably have to rely on me for like everything. And I was like, I could just work remotely. It's cool.
The price you pay to be purple.
Yeah, less a horror story, but you'd be surprised when you do full body paint, just how much you feel yourself in some different colors.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Thank you guys so much for sharing. Just anything you guys want to add before we sign off?
Well, thank you so much for having us. We've really enjoyed our little talks, and hope we can do it again sometime soon.
For sure.
Thank you.
For sure. And listeners, thank you. As always, if you guys have questions, if you have stories you want to send us, make sure you send those in at CosplayStitchAndSeam@gmail.com. Or
go to the website, CosplayStitchAndSeam.com. Also,
Mercedes.
I almost forgot this. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, why are you saying my name?
And where else can they do? Oh, our website.
Yes. CosplayStitchAndSeam.com. Woo! All right.
CosplayStitchAndSeam.com. Let's see. Music for our intro.
Music was by Macy Roberts, and sound editing.
Sound editing, as always, by our wonderful David Jeffries. Be sure to check out his 2 podcasts. There's Dungeons and Chill and Comic Trades Monthly. And I think that's it.
Yep.
Very
Yay!
cool. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Where's your pun?
Oh. Well, punfortunately, I didn't prepare one for this week.
Aww.
You can steal the strip mall one. That's a great one.
I did like that one a lot.
I hope you found this show appealing.
Wah, wah, wah.
Hey, Stitch and Seam. This is Mercedes, aka V-Fire, with one last little thing before we end this episode today. We have our winners for this round of weekend passes for Ogden Uncon. This week's winners are, drumroll, they are Ashley Sidweeks, Aaron Fordham, Sarah Hall, Carly Webster, and Soraya Romney. So contact us either via the Facebook page or email or whichever as soon as you can, and we will get your code to you so you guys can get your tickets for that weekend. Woo! Congrats, guys. Watch the Facebook page today for the next theme and for the next round of 5 tickets. Thank you, guys.